Okay. Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of Sober Bliss Meets. Today I am honoured and delighted because I have the wonderful Jen Elizabeth with me today. Hi Jen.
Hi.
How are
How
you?
are I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. So people know you from Instagram as Resurrection of Me. Can you tell us a little bit about that and your kind of backstory?
Sure. Well, I have a big story. But a lot of people ask me like, when did your addiction start, or when did you start, speaking about the stuff that you went through?
Mm.
And so, my addiction really began before I ever found alcohol or drugs. I've been numbing and escaping reality since I was probably 2 years old. I
Oh.
can remember. Yeah. So it started really young for me. And I have not always spoken about this stuff. I have lived most of my life extremely silent, extremely, in the darkness and suffocating in shame. And, I, it probably was not till maybe 4 years into my recovery that I actually started feeling like I was going to, explode. Like I needed to share what had happened to me, and not only what had happened to me, but, really figure out how can I take all that pain and turn it around into being the power that is going to change my life, because I was sober,
Yeah.
but being sober and consumed in pain is terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's way worse. There's a lot of outside things that are better being sober than in addiction, but
Mm.
the internal, when you're sober and you're feeling it all, it really was just. And so I started speaking out a little bit here and there in my community. And then, I decided with the social media, I started a little bit slow, and I kind of got the feel for it. And, I really just, I remember my first post that I really just let it out and said, I think my first post was probably about my mother wound, about growing up with a mentally ill mom that was unable to love and care for me.
Yeah.
And I was terrified. I was terrified to speak about that because I didn't see at that time a lot of people talking about it. It is something that a lot of women struggle with, and they feel like it's like this huge, betrayal to speak about your mother. There's so many, you know, intricate parts to it all and stuff. And so when I did, I got so much response
Mm.
of people saying, "Oh my God, thank you. That's kind of my story, or that's what I'm struggling with." And so I kind of like, maybe I'm onto something here. Like maybe not everybody has to share about sipping tea in the sunshine. Maybe some people need to share about the just on the floor struggling
The
to
real
stay
stuff.
sober. Yeah, to struggle to stay sober. Sobriety is so beautiful. And I actually rarely use the word sober. I prefer the word recovery, because for me, I believe for myself that sobriety is the absence of substances,
Yeah.
and recovery is healing those parts of myself that once needed those substances to survive.
Yes. That's it.
So it's recovery for me is about healing.
It is.
I'm a healing junkie now. I went from a drug junkie to a healing junkie. I'm all about the healing.
Yeah.
And that's like I said, it started for me so young that, yeah, the initial part of my sobriety and recovery was about just learning how to function without getting high or drunk. I did not understand it, how to brush my teeth, how to shower, none of it. I was completely consumed in addiction. But then after that, it's like, man, the real story happened for me way before then. My real pain and my real shame happened way before then.
Yeah.
And so that's why for me, recovery is a lot about healing.
Yeah.
So
It's not just about stopping whatever it is that you're using. It goes a lot deeper than that,
yeah,
doesn't it? It's not enough just to stop drinking.
it really isn't. I mean, I really applaud anybody that wants to get sober, whether they're, there's so much trend about it now, and there's so much sober curious, and I used to feel like, sober curious, like I got sober to save my freaking life.
Yeah.
It was not about just, ooh, is that more healthy? No, it was about like I was gonna die.
Exactly.
But today I really feel open to it all. Like whatever you want to do, maybe you're just getting sober just to make your life even that much more beautiful. I mean, alcohol is just unhealthy. No, it's kind of interesting because I also am a recovering heroin and meth addict. So no one ever questions me why I quit using heroin. They're never like, but why? You don't slam in the bathroom anymore? But when I talk about alcohol, it's like, you mean you don't even ever have a beer? Well, no, I really don't. And alcohol is really not healthy for you anyways.
Yeah.
And I prefer to be sober. I mean, I prefer how I feel over being fuzzy, I don't know. And it takes time.
Definitely. I can relate to that horrible fuzzy feeling where you're just kind of living constantly in some sort of fog. And then get out.
The first drink or the first time you use in the morning or whatever, it's nice for a minute, 15 minutes or so, but then you have all the yucky stuff that goes with it, and then you're trying to chase that first buzz or the first, and then your whole day is wasted.
Yeah.
And you've not spent any time with the beautiful people in your life. I mean, I would have, I mean, we can get into it, but my story, I mean, my bottom, I don't have necessarily a bottom. My bottom is when I finally quit digging. Like I literally go down the tubes. I would have nothing that I have today. None of the relationships, no children. I would have nothing.
Yeah.
Like I really love being present and awake and alert, and my body's not running on any weird chemicals and any weird reactions, and I'm not tired because I drank in the sun and just all that stuff.
Yeah.
It feels so healthy. It feels so much better. Yeah. But it took a long time. I really freaking hated being sober in the beginning. I hated it. No, I really hated it.
Yeah.
I always say this, and I don't know if you're familiar with this movie, but Lord of the Rings, like if you Google image Gollum from Lord of the Rings, seriously, that is like my early recovery picture. Like I was a freaking mess. Yeah. For a few years. Yeah.
Wow.
Somebody's like, you couldn't have been that horrible in your addiction. I go, no. I'm not talking addiction. I'm talking about recovery. Like the first few years, I was so raw and so wounded and so, I hadn't faced anything in my life ever. And I was 34 when I got sober, clean and sober. So that's a lot of years and a lot of wreckage. Yeah. So it was a lot.
So how, because you've been sober now for what, 8 years? In recovery?
A little bit. A little bit over 8 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And
yeah, miracles.
Yes. And especially how you just described the first, few years of it. How did you find the strength and the motivation to keep going through all of that, horridness?
Yeah. Every day was different. Some days all I did perfectly, and all I've ever done in recovery perfectly is not drink and use. That's it. That's the only thing I've ever done perfectly. Yeah. I have had a shitty attitude. I've, shopped too much. I've eaten too much or starved myself. I mean, there's been plenty of other things that I've done that were not healthy or not towards my growth, but I just didn't use. And so a lot of days I just sat on my hands and I didn't work on anything else about myself. I just, no matter what, I wasn't going to pick up because I didn't want to go back to where I came from.
Yeah.
I come from homelessness and hallucinating and prison. And not everybody maybe has that particular story. You may not have had those maybe consequences, but the feelings are all the same.
Yeah.
That shame and embarrassment and the blackouts and the not knowing what you did and people looking at you, your friends, your loved ones, as your life is falling apart and you're trying to pretend it's not. And all those feelings are the same, whether or not I was in prison or I was a heroin addict. It doesn't really matter. Those are like the differences on the surface, but the feelings were the same, you know, and I didn't want to go back there. I just held on to that some days, and that's all I could do, you know. Slowly but surely, even if all you can barely manage is just not to drink, you know, or use or whatever, slowly but surely, even just doing that, although I believe healing and working on yourself improves your life tremendously, but just not drinking and using one day at a time, you will see things coming together.
Yes, definitely.
You know, and I encourage anyone and everyone to, you know, to look into digging deeper beyond just sobriety, but just sobriety itself, you will feel and see things coming back together. And so as that happens, it's like this shift kind of happens, and all of a sudden it doesn't look so appealing anymore how you used to be and how you used to feel and how your partner used to look at you or your family or your children or whatever the situation was, and losing jobs and trying to get money and lying and stealing from your bank account or stealing from stores, whatever it is that you did. That stuff, all of a sudden, what was once just a way of life becomes like no longer a way that you're willing to live.
Yes. Yes.
So that's kind of what I held on to. I mean, it is a lot. I do take credit for the work that I have done, because I've done a lot of work, you know, but a lot of it, God, it's a miracle. I don't know. I shouldn't be here today, you know? And so I really feel like the universe and God and higher power, whatever it is, you know, has really looked out for me when all I wanted to do was die.
Yeah.
And I really did want to die in early recovery. Big time. Yeah.
Oh. Well, I've just finished reading your book, Shape of a Woman. And yeah, a lot of what you've just said now, you touch on in the book. And honestly, reading it, I just wanted to give you a hug, because you've just been through so much. And you have, you know, you said before that you can take credit for a lot of it. But I think, you know, you can take a credit for a huge amount, because you've been through so much. And to come through all of that and be the positive, inspiring person that you are, I feel has to come from within. So, you know, it's an amazing, amazing story.
Thank you.
And how was the process for you writing the book? Is this part of your recovery? Is it part of your work? Is it helping you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. You know, I've always been, I've always loved writing. I'm a journaler, you know. I really firmly believe in journaling and writing with a pen and paper.
Yeah.
Even if you're not writing a book, you don't have to be writing a book. But I really feel, you know, when I'm not connected to myself, I don't feel connection to anybody else. And a really amazing way for me to connect to myself is journaling.
Yes.
And so I really love journaling. And so it's kind of just like a natural progression. Now, obviously, like you said, my story, I have a pretty crazy story. You know, I really was born into some unfortunate circumstances, you know, with my mom. And then, you know, following through that, my parents joined a religious cult, and, you know, I was sexually molested there. And then, you know, I was an alcoholic at 12 years old. So, and it progressed on until I was 34. And so, yeah, there's been a lot of stuff. So when I started sharing my story, people would be like, what? You should write a book. What? And I'd be like, no, I could barely even speak about this stuff to myself. It took a long time to even accept what had happened to me, and that it wasn't my fault, because I felt I was my fault for years and years and years and years. But once I started, I really, began my healing process, and journaling even more, and journaling more about my inner child stuff, and not just journaling about my day-to-day stuff. I was like, maybe I should write a book. I really, and all the women that, message me, and it's just amazing to me. And it breaks my heart that there are women suffering in shame right now. I just feel like I wish I could just give them all like the power and that I feel today by feeling my pain, feeling my own pain and not avoiding it anymore. And I'm learning as I go, because, speaking about trauma does not necessarily heal trauma. There's a lot of other work that has to be done. Your body remembers everything. And so there's so much to be done. And what's so exciting is that, like, I'm present for it today, and I'm courageous enough that if there's something else for me to do that's going to even improve the woman I am, like, I don't even want to be the same woman I am right now next year. I want to be even more free, even more, courageous and brave and loving and kind and forgiving and all that stuff. So there's like always so much more. So when I wrote my book, I felt like, well, gosh, what if I write this book and like I'm stuck now in that box of who I was when I wrote? And that's really not the case. Like, I really just wanted to get a brief, I go over everything in my book. It's not a long book, but there's more books coming that are going to go. Yeah. So I'm going to go into detail on some of the chapters in Shape of a Woman. So there'll be about 5 books that come all together to make my full like memoir or whatever. So yeah, it was, when I published it was scary. I not everybody is happy that I speak about the mother wound, and not everybody's happy about people that come out about child sexual abuse, and why didn't you tell anybody, and all that stuff. But you have to there's so many more people grateful that somebody's sharing it and feels like they're not alone, because that's the worst part, is to feel like you're alone and that you're wrong for feeling the way you do. That just keeps us sick, I think.
Yes, it does. It does. So what's your daily routine now like, in terms of improving and recovering to something and not being stuck, in the box that you mentioned before? How do you, go about your days?
Right. Gosh, well, one thing I do is I wake up before. I have 2 small children, and I really don't wake up very spiritually fit. I kind of wake up, that's the nicest way. I wake up in fear. I wake up with like these, like, who am I to be writing a book? Who am I to be sharing my story? What am I doing? I don't know why that is, but that's just kind of how I am, how I'm wired a little bit. I wake up just feeling like not confident. So what I've learned is that I know how to turn it around. I have the tools to turn that around now. Yeah. So instead of waking up with my children when they're like, they need food and they need this and that, and they're fighting or whatever, I now wake up like an hour earlier, and I have like intentional mornings where I have time for 1 hour to myself. And I meditate and I pray, and I'm not fancy about anything, but and I write a little bit, and I drink my coffee, and I kind of like remind myself of who I am, and that I am worthy of speaking, and that my story is my story. Yes. And that I have every right to share my story, and that I don't need qualifications in order to heal or share my healing.
Yeah.
And then I start the day. So that has been a life changer for me. My intentional mornings. Yeah. And then, you know, my day is, I try really hard not to spend my day on social media because I want to live.
Yeah.
And although I mean, I'm not on social media like searching for the prettiest eyeshadow, you know, like I'm on there, I'm having interactions and connections and friendships, and, you know, it is a beautiful, I use it, social media for beautiful reasons. So I do love it, but I also want to spend time in the real world and the real life and with my children. And so, you know, I mean, my life is busy. I'm a mom of a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. And you know, he just started first grade, and I'm doing the car, you know, sitting in the line with all the other moms. And, you know, I wear my sober mom shirts, and you know, that's another thing. Like, I really feel like, I read something the other day that said we recover out loud so people don't die in silence.
Yes.
And so I wear lots of recovery clothing, and I have had, and I get the looks, and they're from the moms who are probably drinking the wine at the playground. And I get it. And I'm not here to shame anybody or judge anybody. I just want to share how I live. And I do get moms that go, and almost everybody in this world has been touched by addiction in some way. And I mean, the amount of people that come up to me in the grocery store line, or, oh, I love your shirt, my brother passed away from heroin addiction. Or, you know, hey, I love your shirt, I've been sober 2 years, as they pass me in that farmer's market. You know, it's an amazing community. And I feel like you don't need to hide that you are sober today or in recovery. I mean, I was ashamed of my addiction. I'll be damned if I'm ashamed of what I've become today. There's no way.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I'm wearing a sober t-shirt now.
I was going to wear one of my sober mom shirts. I'm like, I know.
Because I totally agree with that. Why not recover out loud? Why not be proud of
absolutely
and who you are, and share it with the world, and hopefully inspire and help and motivate other people.
It's a great conversation starter when I wear, you know, my sober shirts or sober mom shirts. And it sometimes encourages someone who's afraid to speak up. You know, I've had people ask me, well, where do you go to meetings at? Or, you know, my husband is an alcoholic, or whatever. You know, it opens up the conversation. It's a conversation that needs to be had. And it's a conversation that is being had. I mean, this is such a great time to get into recovery.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more, and I mean in the world, you know, it's becoming more and more acceptable and admired and respectable. And, you know, we don't have to hide anymore in, like, you know, garage basements and like, I'm going to AA, or I'm going to Smart, or whatever it is, whatever path you've chosen. You know, and there's so many paths too. There's, you know, if AA doesn't fit for you, that's okay. There's so many other ways that you can find a community, you know, just find one.
Whatever it is.
That fits you. Yeah, whatever it is. So I use lots of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I use a lot. I still go to AA and NA, but I also do a lot of like healing work, and I love, like, you know, hip sobriety and all the different, you know, avenues. I say, why not?
Well, yeah, just take maybe bits from
that's what I do.
Everywhere that works for you. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
that's pretty much my day.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's pretty much my day. I mean, it's not anything fancy.
No.
Just, you know.
Yeah, I love the idea of the intentional morning just for yourself. It's important to make time for yourself. And I do this in the mornings as well, not for quite an hour. But even, you know, if you can just sit for 10 minutes or 20 minutes on your own with your cup of tea or coffee and just kind of get your head straight, I do think it makes a big difference, especially if you've got children, which is what I wanted to talk to you about now. Most of the mums who go through the program with me, already have children, and then they kind of got into the habit of drinking every night, and it kind of
Right.
spiraled out of there. But you entered motherhood already free from everything.
I did. Yeah. Thank
Um,
God.
have you been affected by, the mummy needs wine culture at all, and all of the kind of marketing and the pressure on us mums who try to make us believe that in order to be a mum, then you need alcohol? Has that affected you in any way?
It affects me because it affects you guys.
Yeah,
I think it's crap.
yeah, it is.
And I also affects me because it affects children. And I happen to really have a heart for children that are suffering.
Yeah.
And because I was a child suffering, my family was in addiction as well. And, so it bothers me in that sense. And I speak out about it a lot. And I have seen some horrific t-shirts, and even on nurses in my pediatrician's office.
Really?
My mommy's, my son has a shirt that says, "My dad's beard is better than yours," or something. And this nurse in the pediatrician office, she had like a jacket on, she pulled it aside, and something like, "My superpower is making wine disappear."
Do you mean?
And I thought that, wow, wow. But, I, as far as me personally, I was in recovery already when I had my children. And however, I am not in any state of denial that if I were to relapse, I would use and drink my children away. And that is hard to say, because I really love my children, obviously. And I make, it is my biggest blessing and my biggest adventure is being a mom. However, addiction takes over.
It does.
For me.
Yeah.
And I would not use and think, oh, forget my kids. I would use and think it'd make me a better mom. Maybe it's going to make me a funner mom.
That's
all the lies that the
right.
addiction tells you. So, although I don't feel the pressure, I just think it's crap. And I don't even feel any pressure by that in that means. But I think it's something that I definitely fight against and speak out against, because, we are all moms. Yeah. And so we are sisters. Mm-hmm. And so I am here to defend my sisters, period, Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel, and it's so hard. I really commend and just feel in awe by women that already have children. It's so hard and such a struggle to get sober singular, Yes. But then you're trying to get sober and be a mom.
I know.
And I just, man, you guys are so badass. And I feel really, 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 although I have a crazy story, I mean, there are people out there that are overcoming just stuff that I can't even fathom. And so I just feel like any mom that is choosing to really kick alcoholism in the butt and has children that they have to care for at the same time, man, you guys are incredible, and you can overcome anything. My goodness.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for everything. My children are as well, although they don't really speak about it that much. My youngest son is quite vocal, actually. He says, "Oh, it's much better now that you don't drink." And but my oldest son, I think my husband and I stopped together, which really, really helped. And it was about, I don't know, maybe a month or something, and he hadn't noticed at all. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we were like, there's no more beer in the house, and there never will be. And he said, "Oh, I didn't notice." But the youngest was. Maybe he was more affected by it, the youngest one, because he needed
right.
And I don't know.
Oh. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, it's been wonderful. Thank you. I'll put a link to your Instagram account on the bottom, in the, what's it called, the description, and also your book. It's available on Amazon.
Yes.
It's a paperback and a Kindle, and is it on audio as well?
It's not on audio yet.
Not yet.
Somebody else asked me that, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should do it on audio. There's so
Yeah.
much to do. Oh my goodness. But it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
It's okay. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah. I'm learning so much as I go. Oh my goodness.
Oh, and that's wonderful. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.